So quick show of hands, anyone ever seen one of my presentations before? All right, cool, awesome, sweet. So I think you might know how I like to start them then. Really quick security video. This one is one of the best break-ins of all time, so enjoy. I said enjoy. Guess what operating system this is? One sec. Now you know. One sec. All right, probably gonna have to use my finger. That sucks.
Wouldn't it be easier if we just went to Flugelman and asked him for our Amigo costumes?
No. Flugelman hates us right now. He's never going to give us our costumes. Lucky's right. This is the only way.
That's it. You'll see why that's relevant later. So first, thanks DerbyCon guys. This conference is freaking awesome. I'm seriously, like, really honored to speak again. This is very cool. Love being here. For those who haven't seen my talks before, I honestly do like interaction. So if you have any questions at all, just shout it out. I'd much rather give the people here an opportunity to understand something if you don't understand it. So just shout it out. I actually prefer that. And just quick shout outs to some of the peeps that made this year really awesome. Reg at GC. Did you guys see that pop up? Awesome. So Reg, Stamus, Gare Bear, Steve, Bob, my boys at Stacks, Ron, Kevin, Jamela, and John. And shout outs to Jeremy, Breen. I'm going to give Breen a round of applause here. In case you don't remember him, he's Canadian. And last but not least, Justin. It's a good year, buddy. All right, so for those who don't know me, wrote a couple books, do a lot of pen testing. Pen testing is pretty much all I did last year. Consult otherwise in InfoSec. But other than that, I really just kind of love security. This is definitely my passion. I'm from Albany. Any 518ers in here? Makes sense. Albany's actually kind of cool. Got a growing InfoSec community, so hopefully we'll have some conferences there soon in the future. I finally finished this goddamn book. As you can see, it's hard for me not to do pretty much everything without a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. So don't judge a book by its cover. You should pick it up, check out what's in it, but it should be a good read. So this year I left the company I was with and went back out on my own, restarted LeetSys. So again, have to do everything tongue-in-cheek and focus exclusively on offensive security, pen testing, all that jazz. So it's an awesome year. Fell in love with Americanos, switched from coffee. So if there's any coffee drinkers in here, you should try that too, switch to Americanos. I was able to get a code signing certificate this year. That was pretty awesome. From start SSL, it was $60, and it took about 24 hours. Freaking awesome. So if you guys are doing any malware phishing, anything like that, and you want a code signing cert, go to start SSL, $60. So that was pretty helpful. Finally got a chance to play with Raspberry Pi and Teensy. Finally, freaking awesome stuff. Hopefully have some stuff released soon. And this year I did a lot of pen testing. It's probably one of my best years for volume and some of the cool things I got to do. And so a lot of them followed that the same path that a lot of other pen testers take. You know, basically do some NetBIOS name server spoofing, something along those lines, get a man in the middle, pop a box, escalate on that box, pop another box, maybe the DC, dump all the creds, and then have a beer, right? So again, if anyone has any questions, definitely shout out. I'm not flying through these ones to go over anyone's head. It's more just because this is the typical ones, right? So these are the attacks that you see all over the place. So what I want to talk about, my war stories, are some of the more interesting ones. Oddly enough, not all of them are really that particularly elite, but they're just cool, interesting, and honestly, some of them are failures. Like I considered some of these things to be not the optimal outcome, and I was really surprised by some of the specific things that I failed at. So I want to share those and have other people learn from my failures. So on that note, if you hear any of these stories anywhere else, let me know, because someone's stealing my stories, and I'll go break some kneecaps. So let me know. And I love hearing war stories. Like, it doesn't matter how long I've been pen testing. I always want to hear pen testing stories from anyone else, even if they are that standard, you know, spoof, pop, dump kind of pen test. Because even just hearing those again, it kind of like solidifies the sheer amount of data that we have to say, yeah, that's a pretty normal thing. That's a standard attack path. The Mopeds. So I wanted to also tell you a personal story. I went to the Caribbean and rented some mopeds, as there were some friends. And so we picked up a couple mopeds. And it wasn't quite what we expected. We've got a little bit of footage from the trip. So I'll just play that here for you guys. So we're having a great time, and then all of a sudden I crashed the moped. Slid under a guardrail, got pretty banged up, but it was crazy because then as we're driving back to the place where we rented them, I'm discussing with the driver. I'm like, be honest, like, is this the soonest that anyone's ever crashed? It was like a mile and a half down the road. And he goes, no, man, like, this kind of stuff happens all the time. Like, tourists always crash mopeds. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, like,
once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
He told me that friggin' so many people crash their mopeds. It's friggin' classic. All right, so now let's get into the technical stuff. I figured that would be a good way to get into my failures for the year. So first, are there any people that either work for a college or have done college pen tests? Higher ed? Anybody? Got a couple? 4 or 5? Cool. Awesome. So we're going to start with 2 pen tests against 2 different colleges, and hopefully you guys will learn a little bit. So we're going to discuss specifically the phishing phase of these. Both of these were kind of open scope pen tests. So it started with the external recon and moved on to phishing. So when phishing, who Googles for the for college.edu and for just the keyword directory from the outside? Awesome. So if you pen test colleges, do this. Colleges specifically, because they are, I haven't found a college yet that has not published an entire staff and faculty directory to the public internet. So it's a goldmine. So normally when I see that, I'm like, ooh, hello there. So in this case, the first directory for this college had, you know, everything you would expect. The person's full name, the department they worked in, their current title. A lot of times it had the current office building and even the room number that they were in. So obviously then it will also have things like phone number. Some of them would have the actual email address in the directory. Other times it would be, you know, click here to email them. And in some cases it would have just an extreme amount of extra information, whether it was the person's resume or CV, their course schedule, their hobbies and stuff. It was just ridiculous. And then of course if, hold on a second, if the directory doesn't have their email address, a lot of times you can just figure out one valid email address and then compute that based on the names that you scrape from there. So I wanted to show you guys some of the visual pieces of this, not only because I personally learned better with some visual elements, but you just kind of grasp a little bit quicker what I'm talking about. So I chose a college in Canada, and you might be thinking, you know, why did you choose a college in Canada? And really just because, well, it's Canada. I mean, what are they going to do, really? You know? And also because I have no affiliation with them. So I chose the University of Toronto to walk through a couple of these examples. And so here's the previous step that I just talked about, searching for a directory. And so in this case, you see that they have something called phone book. So we'll take a look at that. And this is so common for so many of them. You just basically search, you know, a single character, and it returns you a list with people that either start with that or letter or include that letter in their name. And it's really easy to then create a script to just iterate through all the possible letters and save that output. And then you've got a huge CSV. You can create a huge CSV of all of the people. And so again, here you can see they've got their email, their fax, their phone, and their department, and a link to their department. So it's really interesting, some of the very unique things that you'll find in some of these directories, so definitely take a look at those. And then after that, after we've created that directory with a huge amount of targets, just search for login. Anybody that does PenTesters search for just login? Awesome. So you'll see that this directly plays into my standard phishing attack, which maybe standard's not the right word, but it's my go-to phishing attack. So once you've identified those systems, we get a lot of really good information that we can use for phishing. And it's important to not just rely on Google searches. You know, if you back this up with things like DNS Recon and actually scanning their subnets to identify all of their systems that have login fields, and that'll make more sense in 1 second. So again, here's a University of Toronto. Here's an example. Right there, the first 4 results are 4 unique systems that have login fields. Okay, and so we're just going to choose one of those ones at random. Here's just, it says web login. Who the hell knows what it really does? And I love this piece. Right, so they're instructing users on the page to make sure what the page says. It's like, all right, well, if I'm using my own phishing page, right, can I instruct users to just make sure it has my phishing domain, and will they notice? All right, so once we've identified the systems or the domain that we want to spoof, we just go look for a domain to register. And this is where it's especially interesting with Canada, because in America, all colleges, well, most colleges have a .edu as their primary top-level domain. And in Canada, they just have that. You can see it's just the .ca. So you can actually register something that looks even more like theirs. Whereas here, when I typically pen test a college, I just don't care. I'll just register a .com and try to make it look as similar. And you know, even if only 75% of the users don't realize that, then you're fine. So in this case, you know, I'm registering portal-utoronto.ca, right? And so theirs was utoronto.ca. We then go get a free SSL certificate from Start SSL. Anyone ever just get the free certs from there? It's friggin' awesome. So free web certs. All you do is verify with the admin contact of that domain. So you just register the domain, so you are that guy. And then we actually just create the phishing website. And so like things like the Social Engineers Toolkit, they'll automate that copying of website, and that's what I used to do. But it's actually, you can do it even far simpler than that and save yourself a little bit of a headache. So I always ran into problems with things like CSS and linked files that would just mess up when you try to copy them. So I actually just reverted to literally taking a screenshot of their logo, pasting it into Paint, cutting around it, and then popping that into my system, and it seems to work a lot better. So we give it a good name. And so again, in this case, we've registered portal-utoronto.ca. And so that's kind of my go-to, is phishing across the board. This technique tends to work really well. I just create portal-target.com. And a lot of people either don't understand the significance of the dash, that it's different from a dot, or they're just so used to domains that are not necessarily a subdomain of their existing domain. All right, so after that, we're going to create the phishing email. So again, with that directory, after scraping that, and I've released a couple script examples to do that, but it's actually really easy to scrape all those results and pop them into a CSV. And then think about that. If we have all this stuff in a CSV, we can iterate through all of that for each email, and then each email will be even more personalized for each target. So in this case, let's just assume the person's name is Thomas, and this is the almost verbatim the type of phishing email that I use every single time because it has good results. So I haven't had a real reason to switch it up yet. So if any of you get pen tested by me in the future, now you have a good look at what I'd use. So you should do better, hopefully. But I'll do something just like this. Thomas, we will be consolidating our online systems, including webmail, and there's actually a typo there. Webmail, web login, calcium, and so those were the names of Uterano that we identified. So we're using those systems that they're used to seeing. We're saying, hey, rather than logging into all these unique systems, we're consolidating them into one, and that's the new portal system. So go ahead and log into https portal-uterano.ca and make sure that you verify your information below. And so we spit back his full name, his title, the department he's in, maybe the building, right? So when the emails are that specific to the person, the success rate goes way up, right? It's no more just a generic thing. And if you want to be super evil, you can tie it to, if you want to make sure you get your next paycheck, this information needs to be right, and then just make one subtle little change, right? All right, so a lot of people still like to spoof the email. So in this case, they want to make the email come from like support@uterano.ca, which is fine. You can still do that, but a lot of spam filtering systems are starting to pick up on that. So in this case, where should we send it from? What's that? Yeah, exactly. Why not? We own the domain. We're going to avoid all those issues with some of the spam filters. If they do any like the SPF lookups to make sure that like we own that domain or we're coming from the right origin, we're going to be fine. So 9 times out of 10, that's what I'm doing, is just sending it from something like support@portal-domain. And so again, we don't want to skimp on this step. So if you look up what they refer to their support personnel as and use that. So I typically search for help desk, ITS, support, and make sure, because a lot of times we'll have different groups. So in this case, you can see they might call their help desk something besides just help desk. And so if we go there, we not only get the name, information commons help desk, which is, in this case, a perfect example because it's so weird, it's so esoteric. You're not going to see that anywhere else. So not only do we duplicate that, but we duplicate the style of the email. So we send it as help.desk@portal-uterano.ca. Make sense? Cool. So again, all these little things are just going to make us have a much higher success rate. So then let's take a look at what my portal system typically does. So again, generic login system. I'll make it match their primary login system that I identified and make sure that it looks identical. Once they log in, it's going to blast out an email to me and say, we got a new victim, here's their username, and then it logs the password as well. And then when I have valid credentials, if I want to take it a step further, I'll try to deploy malware. And so this is what the website will typically say, something so generic just like this. And so obviously it would be within the context of that site. So it would still have their logo up there. It would just look like the next step in logging in. But it says something just like this. To access the portal system, you need this VPN client. So download the client, and then you have to give it 24 hours. That way, when it doesn't progress, nothing changes for them. They just say, okay, I need to wait 24 hours, which is perfect, because then they just forget about it. And so at this point, when they download that executable, what they're really downloading is typically my signed binary, which is just a very, very simple dropper, which very small in size to actually download the full-blown backdoor. And the full-blown backdoor communicates with the phishing site to do a lot of other interesting stuff. And so once that has happened, once they've actually run the dropper hits another page on the phishing website, which emails me again and say, hey, you have a new backdoor installation. And I get the username of the person logged in, the host name, which can a lot of times give you a lot of good information as well as the external IP. So anyone know why we might want the external IP, not the internal? Exactly. Home versus work. That's exactly why. And even just remote sites. So we know exactly where they're coming from. And I have some scripts where you can actually then automate what you want to do based on that, right? So we could even just alert us and say, hey, new home user or, a person working from the corporate office. But we could even get a little bit more advanced from that. But we can react to that. So what does the backdoor do? The full-blown backdoor. pretty standard stuff. It hides files and folders, hides processes, does some key logging, and it reports back to the command and control server. And the command and control server tells it what to do. So whether it's just expand itself, and the backdoor stays pretty small to make sure that it runs efficiently. But it'll tell the backdoor to download other files, execute those files, run updates, and send anything back that I want, whether it's the keylog data, other files, whatever. So again, when it reports to me, I know I've got a new victim. This is how I feel. No matter how many boxes I pop, this is how I feel. Anyone else is kind of the same way. It doesn't matter. Every time you get a new shell, I'm one of 3 idiots out of these people. Great. All right. Well, it still makes me giddy every time. And so I started making changes to my backdoor last year, mostly because a lot of it was hand-coded, like stupid stuff, because it took me years and years to write all of the functionality that I currently have in it. And literally, in the beginning, all this stuff was even written with TCP sockets. So I was literally making the HTTP requests by hand, and quickly realized that was a huge pain in the ass. There is definitely a better way. And that's when I found the curl library, which is an awesome library. And it allows you to really quickly integrate HTTP communication, HTTPS, among another handful of protocols. And it turns, a page of code into 1 or 2 lines. So it's pretty awesome. So the problem is that as I was porting this over to the new system, trying to make it better, faster, stronger, I had to kind of start from scratch with some of these things. So at the point that I had these pen tests, I didn't have file hiding or process hiding. I could only really do communications with the command and control server and key logging. Those were really the ultimate things that I could do, and as well as download and run arbitrary executables. So it still had that expandability. I could still deploy this as the primary backdoor and then just send an exe of Meterpreter or whatever I wanted. But this was the good persistence module. However, I didn't have those hiding features. So the problem is that I got to the point with these pen tests, I was like, all right, I'm kind of out of time. I either have to go back to the crappy previous one, at which point I'm not really sure, because I haven't worked on it in so long, if it's all functional or if I screwed it up. So screw it. I just kind of have to go with what I have. And, at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? It's still a functioning backdoor. I'm sorry? So have you read the Rootkit Arsenal? Awesome book. So that dude, Bill Blunden, he has examples in there of everything, and I think he has full-blown examples where you can literally just take his code, compile it as a DLL, and then incorporate it into your backdoor. So both of those were from his book, and they're freaking awesome. So technically, how is it doing it? Honestly, I don't even really remember. I haven't even brought these over to the new backdoor yet. So soon. But actually, I do have it on my laptop. So if you want to catch me afterwards, and we'll take a look at it and figure it out. Good question. So I was at that point where I only had that bare bones functionality, and I said, screw it, let's go with it. So who searches for this? Does no one search for antivirus at their target college? Cool. Well, do that. Because once we identify that, we can just download a trial. I don't think there's any AV that does not have a free trial. I haven't come across it. So download a trial of my target colleges, and I tested my dropper, make sure it wasn't picked up. And so the irony is that the crappy Norton antivirus that was on my work laptop at the time picked up my dropper. But then when I installed the VM, I installed the target's antivirus in a VM, it did not pick it up. And the Norton thing, the Norton AV actually even picked up my executable when it was signed, which I thought was pretty good. Even though it was giving me like a very generic signature. So it wasn't even based on a signature, it was actually based on its reputation. So I don't know if anyone knows about the whole reputation thing, but basically if it doesn't see your binary on other people across the world on their systems, it's assuming, okay, it might be something malicious that's just popping up, and it flags it, gives it a very generic signature, and it doesn't allow you to run it. So Norton is actually working well there, and I keep meaning to go back and figure out how to break that. Just on my list of a million things that I don't have time to do yet. So soon. So again, the dropper and the backdoor were not picked up by the target's organization's AV, so that was pretty awesome. So the first organization, the first fish, from that directory, I had well over 1,400 email addresses. I organized them by department, so that's what's so great. When you have them in a CSV, you import them into Excel or S-Office, sort by department, and then you know exactly who you need to avoid and who you can bring in. It's a really nice way to target a lot of people fast. So I targeted a few key places, specifically like finance. That was one of the targeted places we want to get access to. And I sent this just before I left on a 3-hour trip. So I was like, I'm not worried about it, even if they pick up 1 or 2. I'm typically guaranteed somewhere around like a 50% success rate on credentials, maybe somewhere around like 10% to 20% on malware deployments. So if I deploy to 10 machines, they can catch 9 of them. I only need 1 box, because typically that's how most pen tests goes, right? You need to pop 1 box, and from there it's quick to escalate. So that's what I was thinking. So I sent the email, and as I'm driving, I'm getting all these alerts. Got over a dozen deployments of the malware. I think like 20 plus credentials, and I'm like super psyched because then I see an admin email come in. This is an admin logged in, and their password was company name 1. So again, if it was University of Toronto, the password was UToronto1. So I'm super psyched. Like this in the car. I'm like, all right, cool. Pedal to the metal. I got to get there fast. However, when I get there, I don't have a single functioning backdoor. So it was, like 2 hours later at that point. And I found out afterwards that they have a endpoint management system called Delcase. Anyone in here have experience with Delcase? I don't think so. I really don't. But you can Google that easily enough. So I actually don't know a lot about Case even after the pen test. But anyway, they said that that's what they used. They just created a very quick script using that if it found my backdoors folder, it just deleted it. And as stupidly obvious as that sounds, I just wasn't expecting it, because there have been so many tests where after a successful few malware deployments, I'll see the emails go out from the help desk that say, hey, we think we might have been victim to a phishing scam. If you've seen this email, you might want to change your password. And that's like the verbiage that they would use. They'd be like, you might want to change your password. It's not even like, hey, let us know, stuff could be really bad. You might even have malware. They were just like, change your password and we're good. So I've never experienced responses like this. So that was the first that I consider to be a pretty serious failure on my part, that I didn't account for even a modicum of skill from the incident response team. So that was pretty cool. So the second fish was also against a college. Again, same exact technique, created that directory, or scraped that directory, sent to 40 people within financial services. I was in the office that day, but it took me a little bit of time to get in front of my computer after the boxes were getting popped. And so I got a handful of them, and then I just started losing them like immediately. And I was like, damn it, what? Couldn't get them back. And so I decided, screw it, like this isn't happening to me again. Like I need to get this deployed and get on these boxes. So I pulled up the spreadsheet again, sent it to an additional 200 people, and let that fly. And so I did end up getting some legit backdoors. The best one was the backdoor was deployed on the CFO's home computer. So again, knew that from the IP address, and his actually ended up being the one that ultimately gave me a good amount of access to VPN into their network and get a lot of interesting data, obviously. So again, though, that initial response from ITS was completely unexpected by me, especially because of how quickly it happened, right? So I found out afterwards when we talked about what I did and their response, that all they had done was change the DNS record that my malware was looking up. So it was reporting back to portal-college.edu, college.com, and all they had to do was point that at the local host, and so my backdoor stopped communicating with me. I was like, oh, it's freaking such an obvious, stupid way for me to rely on communication. And ultimately, I don't think that that I was overconfident or even really cavalier about the response. I've just done that so many times and seen that their response is usually just that, like, just change your password and we're good. And even ones where they have gone and investigated the computers, I usually at least have bare minimum 24 hours, and then their response is usually way worse in the opposite direction. They're just like, screw it, we'll just wipe the box, start from scratch, and then I still have access to all those other boxes. So really, I think it was more just a little bit of complacency. I'd gotten so used to doing the same thing over and over, I was like, they're not going to catch it. I'll be fine. So really, some of the takeaways for other pen testers in here is like, with those types of legitimate responses, because they did things like, fired up Wireshark and took a look at what my backdoor was doing, fired up things like, I think Process Explorer and the other related tools from sysinternals. So to really like try to figure out what my malware was doing. So I thought that was a really awesome, really good indication that as an industry, InfoSec might be moving in the right direction from a defensive perspective. So however, in the future, I'm definitely building way more dynamic functionality into mine as far as failing over to additional domain names or a few static IP addresses of my systems on the internet. I'm going to change it up. I'm sorry? I knew from them that it was not automated because they told me the response. So they were alerted from users, and then they investigated those machines and started right away with the manual approach. Wireshark, looking at what the malware was doing and trying to figure it out so that they didn't just have to wipe the machines or do anything stupid. So yeah, it was really good to see from them. I gave them big kudos for that. So again, I was also taking the same action on all computers, and I should have been switching it up. I mean, this kind of stuff that ironically I've even spoken about before in writing your own backdoors, like functionality that you can include, and I just was of the mindset that I would be fine without it. So again, from that perspective, it's kind of cool to know that we're moving in the right direction, and we need to get a little bit more complicated, a little more advanced. And so again, me personally, I definitely learned more about what's becoming more common for incident responders. And so these are really more just like sysadmin level guys. So it's really great to see that they know what to do to respond to some suspected malware, and they didn't just wipe the boxes. And so quick side note on these tests, I had some freaking hilarious stuff with some of these tests this year. So one user submitted as their username in my phishing website, "Why are you attacking us?" And so every time I think about that person at the keyboard who's like, like tears in their eyes, like, "Why are you doing this to us?" It just cracks me up. And then someone submitted username FU, and what do you think the password was? FU. That's friggin' awesome. I never found out who that was, but it was pretty awesome. I also found emails going out from the CFO that said, "Hey, help desk, I'm having trouble logging into the portal system. Can you make sure it's okay?" And so seeing those types of things in the person's outbound email is freaking classic. I love that. Even better is a few times I'll see the email from the help desk warning users about my phishing email, and it's just in their trash unread, and I'm like, "Thank you, users." It's classic. And then also, this is one of the weirdest things. I've had portal systems that months and months later will have a user log into them, but I've never had this. I had a user. So it was a pen test for kind of like a SaaS, software as a service company. And so I hosted the same portal system. And almost a year to the week later, I had someone from another company, one of that company's clients, try to log into my portal system. And so I got their username and password. And I don't know how the heck they found my portal system, because I Googled for it, portal and the domain, but it didn't come up. So somehow they stumbled onto it and thought it was legitimate and tried to log in. So I thought that was pretty funny too. All right, so real quick, everyone stand up. Quick break. Do a little test here. If you have medical issues, feel free to stay sitting down. That's fine. Yeah. All right, so take your right hand and put it over your shoulder like this. Take your left hand and put it over your shoulder like this. Put your hands on your hips. Turn your head to the right. Now kind of like cough and grunt. Do it! All right, real fast now. Ready? It's 1, 2, 3. All right, one time, all together. Ready? On the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. I don't know why, but I just always wanted to see a bunch of people do that.
I'm Ned Niederlander.
I'm Dusty Bottoms. Together we're
The Three Amigos.
There you go. There's your pointer reference for you. All right. So next up is 2 quick stories about physical pen tests that I got to do against an energy management company. We'll just leave it at that. And so again, very careful that no confidential data is in here. This is not the site. This is just a generic-looking site that's kind of similar. So the tactic that we wanted to take, and also I have to give 100% props to Steve, who this was his, not this Steve, different Steve. This was his baby. He came up with the idea and executed on it, and you'll see how it worked out. I think it worked out okay, but it was also just fun as hell. So he wanted to rent a truck, get some magnetic stickers essentially, and apply them to the side to say FedEx Custom Critical for Custom Critical Delivers. We'll grab a couple of weird-looking things, cases filled with some stuff, put them on pallets. This is Steve in his FedEx uniform, getting ready with his tool to have the client sign. This is one of the palletized cases on there, and you can kind of see some of the labels on there, but he put the most hilarious and oddball warnings on there. One of the warnings said, caution, do not wear cotton underwear when handling this box, which is he didn't make it, he found it, and it's a legitimate warning sticker. So he threw that on there, and it gets even funnier. So we loaded this bad boy up with 100 pounds of concrete and a whole lot of candy. Because hopefully if we're successful and we leave it there, and when the people open it, they get a lot of concrete and some candy. So the first site we get to, we pull up, and it's a guard shack just like this. However, there's fence all around the perimeter on the other side of this guy. Cameras everywhere. We did a pretty extensive recon a couple weeks before. And so we pull up, and we're like, yeah, we got these big crates in the back. We gotta deliver these here. And the guard says, okay, who are you here to see? We give him a name of somebody that we know should not be answering their phone at that time. And so he calls up the guy, doesn't answer, calls him back, doesn't answer, calls him back, doesn't answer. He's like, ooh, sorry, I gotta check with someone. Like, that's our protocol. I'm like, yeah, go ahead, call him up. Doesn't matter, we got time. So he like calls his boss or somebody, gets the approval. He just says it's here for somebody's name. And the guy goes, all right, you're all set, go on through. So we pull in, and we go up to the loading dock. And we start unloading this pallet, and right before we set it on the ledge, we like both lose our grip, and like it goes vertical, and meanwhile it has all these warnings on it. It's custom critical, and so luckily we didn't drop it, so we saved ourselves. Bring it in, and the guy at the loading dock, Steve asked him if he can use the bathroom. So the guy brings him in. Steve goes to the bathroom, waits a couple minutes, comes out, and the guy's gone. So that's when we got to get our target asset, which was pictures of sensitive areas, maybe some network jacks. So if that was in scope, we would have deployed something that would call home, and it would have been a gold mine. So Site 1 seemed like a pretty good success. Same company, Site 2, very similar site. We pull up. We go with the same story. You know, we got a big pallet we got to deliver, and the guy goes, FedEx. Yep, you guys are on the list. Go on through. And so same deal. We go to the loading dock, unload the crate. No mishaps this time. Go to open the door. Doesn't open. Start buzzing people. Nobody's coming there. We're literally just I'm pushing the button and holding the button to call somebody, and nobody's answering us. So I'm like, screw it. We're gonna find somebody. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen at this point? You know, they're gonna make us, and we'll have to leave. So go around to the side and just start like banging on the door, and nobody's answering. Meanwhile, we see that there's, like 100 cars in the parking lot. So luckily, 5 minutes later, somebody comes out the door and he goes, yeah, I'll take care of you in 1 second. So I give him the quick spiel, we're here with FedEx. I just need somebody to sign for that box, blah, blah, blah. So he comes back, signs for it, and I go, oh, I'm sorry, I really got to go to the bathroom. And Steve, obviously with the whole underwear thing, loves to ham it up. So he's like, yeah, man, like, what do you got, the runs? Like, you know, is that stuff you ate? Like, you know, I don't want you going to the bathroom in the car, blah, blah, blah. So the dude lets me in, follows me to the bathroom, because the protocol is that they're supposed to not leave anyone unattended, any guests unattended. So he brings me to the bathroom, and I get in the bathroom, there's a couple people already in there, so I'm like, all right, well, I can't just stand here. So I go into the stall, and I'm like, all right, well, I got to make this legitimate too. I don't want people to just see, you know, some guy standing in the stall. So I drop my pants, bend over, I'm just sitting there for, you know, 10 minutes. I'm like, you know, screw it, I'll bring out my phone, I'll play some chess. Try to make it like, you know, awkwardly long for this guy. And so finally I'm done. I'm just like, all right, I'll get out of here. Walk out, and the guy's still standing there. So again, kudos to them, good job. However, when we leave, that one was also a success, because if you consider, you know, a pallet that size, what could we have really delivered with that? Probably something pretty serious. And so we considered it a success. And so we were wearing pen cams the whole time to record our interactions. And it wasn't until after I had sent the videos home with Steve, and he grabbed them, that I realized, oh, wait a minute, that was here. And when I went to the bathroom, I bent over, and I was like, oh, how do I not awkwardly ask Steve if my genitals are part of his presentation? So luckily I was good. I was not naked on a client presentation for physical security. Like, that's a different kind of physical penetration test. So those were the cool physical ones that I got to do. How much time do I have, by the way? I have 6 minutes? Holy shit. All right, so we're gonna skip through this stuff really fast. So after that kind of stuff, I usually celebrate. Really quick physical pen test story. Went to a loading dock. There was one of these things there. Hopped on that. Hopped onto a roof. Hopped onto another roof. Climbed up to another roof, and there were a bunch of bubble skylights on there. They had no contact switches, no trigger plates for alarm systems, and they were secured by Phillips head screws. So I was like, I could unscrew these, and I could drop down using my grappling hook, which unfortunately I've never used in a pen test. I'm dying for that day. But I'm like, I might do that. However, I'll hop over to this other building for this client, which is right next door first, and see if there's anything there. So it turns out that on the side entrance that was unsecured, it took me 5 hits with a bump key, walked inside. The main door had a security system and a camera pointing right at it, but the side door, there was nothing on it. Waltzed right in, popped a couple boxes, and left. So again, partied it up. This is my party song, Make It Rain, but we'll skip past that. So there was also another physical pen test where I'm going to reveal one of my secret weapons here, Argyle. Anyone ever wear Argyle in a physical pen test? Yeah? Just try it sometime. Let me know how it works for you. Because why Argyle? Have you ever seen a criminal in Argyle? No? Neither have I. So it works every single time. It's just like it immediately instills trust. You know, they're like, this guy might be a little bit douchey, but he's not a criminal, so it's usually pretty good. So I'm targeting this financial part of a building. I usually carry just a couple very small, easy to conceal things, one of which is just a wound up little piece of wire to shim doors with. So I tried shimming this 2 doors that looked like it should have been easy, but it just wasn't working, so I was like, screw it. I just called the cleaning guy over, who happened to be there, and I also carry usually a set of keys with me with no car keys on it, because they just look like generic keys. And I'm like, hey man, John. I didn't give him any last name. I just chose the name John. I was like, John gave me these keys, but they're not working on this door. Like, can you get access to this room? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Here you go. So he opened it up, let me in. I start popping boxes, but he walks in, and I'm like, screw it. I'm not going to deal with this. Like, you know, I don't want to make him suspicious. So I go. It was a weird place where once you were in that part of the building, there was it was 2 floors. So I went to the upstairs, went to the back door, and I've done this multiple times. That works really well. There was a cardboard box right there, so I ripped off a tiny little piece, stuck it in the door jamb, where the plug is, kept it from closing, and I was like, all right, cool, I'll just come back later. So later, I go back to that entrance, like an hour later, and I go to open the door, and it doesn't open, and I see there on the outside is the cardboard laying on the floor. I'm like, damn it. So normally it would work, but luckily in this case, at least no one noticed it. You know, it wasn't like a piece of duct tape, like the Watergate scandal. So I tried bumping it, Wasn't working. I tried picking it, and I was just off my game, just being a pain in the butt. So luckily, just checked the ceiling, and this still worked. So I hopped over the drop ceiling onto the other side, and I was back into the area that I needed to be in. And what's interesting, though, is that this is not necessarily that uncommon, but here, they didn't know about that. They thought that they had security walls at each of the ingress-egress points for this part of the building. So this was new to them, and I just happened to kind of stumble upon it. So from there, I went to accounts receivable, accounts payable, the CFO office, used the same little shim wire to get in there, started popping boxes, and then I got out of there. And then I partied again. So then let me see. So what time does actually my talk end? All right, let's try to get to the best one here. So this was an interesting one where small attack surface, couldn't find anything from the internet, went to their location physically. Yes, I bring an Aston Martin to all of my physical pen tests because, well, why not? And so went there, found a wireless network. It's so rare. I can't remember the last time that I found that a WEP access point was my entry point into an otherwise very secured client. And so found a hidden one. That's all it had. It was hidden with WEP. Cracked it. Got access to the router itself. So the default password, it was not a Linksys. It was some little AT&T thing. Terminated an internet connection. And the default password was supposed to be password. And it ended up just being password 1. So you could tell that they didn't really use that. And so I turned on remote management, went back to my house, remotely managed it, changed their DNS settings to forward to me. I logged them for a day, just sent these people resolved DNS to the legitimate website, and then decided afterwards, a day later, that I'll serve up a fake proxy login page. So this is a technique that I wanted to use for a while, specifically the fake proxy login. And so I just put their logo on the site and said, you know, to continue browsing the internet, please log in using your Active Directory credentials. Just looked like a very generic poor login. Got a couple credentials right away. I did serve up an EXE just like I showed before. However, everyone was logging in from like iPads and things like that. So I didn't get any backdoor deployments. But from there, I immediately logged into email, stored it all offline in a PST. They had hosted Outlook web access. Logged into their hosted SharePoint server, grabbed a bunch of stuff that way. So that was a cool one too. So again, at that point, celebrated. And all right, so this is the one I really wanted to go over. This is the one that I had so much fun on. So I could probably speed through this in a minute and a half. So let's get through it. So on the scoping discussion with the client, he wanted to do it as an internal pen test. And so we were going to get a physical drop, physical network connection. That was it, and go from there. So this guy goes, when we're discussing the targeted assets, I say, okay, what do you want us to target? What would be of most value to your business if we got access to those? And he starts going over a couple, and then he goes, and the mainframe. And I go, what? Oh, you have a mainframe here? Do you want us to target that? And he goes, no. And I'm like, look, it's your pen test. If you don't want us to target that, that's fine. We don't have to. And he's like, no, it's not that. And he's like wobbling on it. I'm like, dude, do you want me to go after it? And he's like, yeah. Well, he's like, if we include it, you're just not going to get access to it. And I'm like, well, do you want it on the list or not? And so, you know, not being a douche, I'm just like, cool, like you either want it on the list or not. And in my head, I'm like, dude, I'm totally going number 6 on these guys. And anyone know what that is?
We'll work up a number 6 on them.
Number 6? I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, that's where we go riding into town. A whopping and a whopping. Every living thing that moves within an inch of its life. Except the women folks, of course.
You spare the women?
No, we rape the shit out of them at the number 6 dance later on.
Marvelous. That's so creative.
All right, so that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I'm going to frickin' go to town on this place. I've never wanted to, do well in a pen test before. So get there, get the drop. Always start with Wireshark. Always, don't care what the pen test is. I just want to see what's happening on the network. So in this case, it was just like a lot of other places. I see a lot of CDP traffic, HSRP, VRRP, and NetBIOS broadcast, of course. So set up a NetBIOS name server spoofing server. Start answering replies. Get a couple, literally 2 auth requests within the first like 30 minutes. So I take those, crack them. They both cracked relatively quickly. Awesome. So then I try to use PSExec to hop on those boxes. Sure enough, works. They have local admin, so I'm good. I dump the local hashes on that box. And then I take those credentials that I have, not the hashes, but the credentials from those users, and I start querying LDAP. And I freaking love LDAP. It's one of the most underused protocols, but it gives you so much information. So from there, once I have those, it gives me a little bit bigger look into the network. So I start seeing things like their servers, their subnets, obviously all of their users, and specifically which ones of those users are their admins. So then I start scanning target subnets for who the current logged in user is. I find one that has one of those admin accounts, right? It's actually just happens to be a domain admin service account. So booyah, that's pretty awesome. I'm able to PS exec to that one again and grab those clear text credentials. That use the pass the hash technique, so I'm able to log on with the local admin account that I dumped earlier. I'm good to go. Then I PS exec to the domain controller, dump all the hashes, go to town cracking. At that point, I have domain admin. I start scanning all of their systems for the targeted types of data. So I get credit card data, PII, lots of awesome stuff. And then I start querying for anything related to the mainframe. I'm literally just searching for the keyword mainframe. And then I hop back on LDAP and find something that looks like it might be the thing he was referencing. And so it wasn't called Big Box. That's just the name I chose. But that was the problem, is it was unfortunately not named mainframe. They just had a weird name, and so I had to go from there. So I port scan. It's got a couple oddball ports on it, but also has 23 and 161. What ports are those? Telnet and SNMP. So both of those are pretty important. So in the past, I've actually used SNMP to, anyone know one of the most awesome things that you can actually get from SNMP, regardless of the host? What is it? No, not Creds. Read. NetStack connections, right? It doesn't seem like it's that helpful, but it's insanely helpful. So you know who's remotely connecting to that host. So if they're admin ports, you probably know that that's where an admin is sitting. So in the past, I could then go after those boxes, pop those, and then hop into it because we know that those boxes have those credentials. So in this case, I SNMP walk that the mainframe, and I get things like system owner, OS version, and I get netstat. So I see some connections on port 23. So then I pop those workstation boxes, dump packets on port 23, and I get some of those credentials because Telnet's clear text. But I try to log into the mainframe, and it works, but I just get this crappy text-based menu system. It looks like that's just one of their end-user systems for doing what they do. But I didn't have admin access. I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm sure they'll appreciate this, but I want to own this box. This box will be mine. And so then I go back and like, oh yeah, system owner, that's going to be helpful. And so I'm hoping that in the time that this person has first set that up, which is clearly years ago, that the system owner is still the same. And luckily it was. And I already cracked his hash from dumping all the hashes on the domain controller. So I just logged into his email, hoping that he slipped up and put the password in there or something. So I'm searching for anything related to the mainframe. Keyword mainframe, the name of it, password, remote, login, anything like that. Don't find anything in particular, so I start scanning all the workstations for his name. His name was not R. Smith, but I started scanning for it. Found where he was logged in, popped that box. Again, because I have domain admin, I can just use PS exec, hop on that box. And at that point, it was time to go home. It was end of the day. So I go home, I have all that stuff. I'm like, tomorrow, I'm going to kill it. Like, I have to get this. I have access to this box. It's almost game over. So I fixed my, or changed my keylogger, which just uses a standard Windows hook on interrupt 13 for the keyboard, and dumps all those. And so normally it would tunnel it back to me, send it to my C2 server. I'm like, I don't want to risk anything not working. I'm just going to log it to a file and deploy it as a standalone exe. So the next day, I do that, deploy it on his box. I don't see anything, but I also grab screenshots. And he has a PDF up of managing the mainframe and changing the admin password. I'm like, that's interesting. So then I go and look for that PDF. I find it on one of the file shares, grab that, so I now know what he's reading. And I also identified some password docs at that point, because now I knew exactly who he was and who I should target. Grab those. I also found remote admin docs. So this is what I really needed. So the remote admin docs detailed how to connect to the mainframe and how to manage it. Clearly did not have the password, though. So what it said is that you need to connect to our bounce boxes, our admin boxes, which uses this proprietary tool. I forget what it's called. It might have been Radmin or one of the, maybe not Rad, I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but it was one of those remote administration tools. And so from there, once you have that, then you run the management tool, because the management tool is only installed on these couple bounce boxes, and then you're good to go. So luckily, it was right around that time that he had actually finally typed something on his keyboard, and I had that in the keylog file. And what did he type? Nothing else but the previous password and the new password. So luckily I had that, so I hopped on the bounce box. And so at that point, it was triple authenticating. So I had his domain credentials, which is how I authenticated to the remote admin software, or the remote desktop software. His credentials to the mainframe and the root credentials to the mainframe, and then it was game over. So sorry it was so freaking rushed, but then I was like, frickin', this is mine. And so last piece of that is the conversation.
Oh, so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
So also how I felt. So I'll tell you this, and then we'll call it a day. But because it was so funny, because we have the phone call with the guy, with their whole team, and I detail everything that just happened, how I ended up getting root access to his mainframe, and so just talking by myself essentially for 10 minutes, and then so I'm like, yeah, so that's it. That's how I got root, and so there's utter silence on the phone for a second, and then all I hear is, wow. And that was it. That was like the best response I ever got. So it took a minute, and they started asking questions, but I thought that was pretty funny. So that was it. Releasing some tools. I'll just post them online soon. So take a look at my blog, or follow me on Twitter, and you'll see the stuff there. But the biggest one I'm really excited about is El Dapper Dan, which for those of you who don't speak Spanish is Spanish for the Dapper Dan. So it automates a lot of this grabbing of really good recon data from LDAP. Things like, the most important ones to me are things like sites, subnets, and trusts. So again, I'll call it quits here because I'm sorry, I'm already holding somebody else up. But really, really important information that can really help you get a good idea of how a network really looks. So yeah, sorry if you want to see me afterwards if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you very much.